First, the news from unknowncountry.com. A Danish laboratory reports that it has found evidence of the presence of the explosive thermite in dust recovered from the site of the September 11, 2001 destruction of the World Trade Center. This is the first time that physical evidence of a pyrotechnic used in, among other things, demolition, has confirmed to be present in this debris. Previously, there had been some ad hoc analyses of the debris, but it has taken this long for a formal laboratory analysis of this dust to take place. The laboratory claims that substantial amounts of thermite were found in the dust. And the question becomes, why didn't the EPA report the presence of this material in this dust when it analyzed it in 2002? Researchers concerned that the collapse of the two towers was not a likely result of impact by aircraft have long contended that they appeared to implode as if they had been destroyed by controlled demolitions. The discovery that thermite was definitely present during the disaster strongly suggests that the towers may have been prepared in advance for destruction. Thermite is a pyrotechnic capable of producing extremely high heat. It can be applied to surfaces such as steel beams, and if ignited, could cause the sort of weakness that followed the impacts of the jets on the buildings. It has not been shown that the temperatures generated by the burning of jet fuel could have caused steel structural elements in the buildings to fail. The specific substance found was a metastable intermolecular composite or superthermite containing nanoparticles, which made it highly energetic. What does this all mean? Well, either the buildings were intentionally demolished in some sort of bizarre false flag attack, or they were mined prior to anything like this happening because of the fact that they contained in their upper floors highly secret National Security Agency facilities. And it's believed by some researchers that the United States routinely mines buildings that contain such facilities so that if the buildings should be overtaken by terrorists or invaders, they can be destroyed. Under this scenario, the thermite would have been set off presumably by the jet fuel. However, noted 911 expert David Ray Griffin does not believe this hypothesis and will be on Dreamland soon to discuss his new book and also these extraordinary new findings.
Don't miss the Dreamland Festival, June 26th to June 28th. Listen to what William Henry has planned.
I'm going to be calling for a new American Revolution of a whole different kind. The kind the Founding Fathers really wanted us to have. Now is the time.
Listen to what Ann Strieber has planned.
I've read over 500,000 abduction accounts, more than anybody else in the world, and I know things that other researchers don't. And I will tell you things they cannot or dare not. And I will answer your questions based on my unique knowledge.
Get your tickets now by clicking on the store tab on unknowncountry.com, then going to the latest. Do it now. Tickets will run out.
In Santa Monica this weekend, there was an extraordinary UFO event, and a very important one. After participating in a globally synchronized Earth healing meditation on Sunday, April the 4th, Ed and Chris Sherwood mentally asked for support from any benevolent extraterrestrial intelligence and initiated a 1-hour Skywatch. The result was that they obtained a daylight video of UFOs over northern Santa Monica. This is a strong reminder that our visitors stand ready now to engage with us in new ways. All we need to do is ask, and synchronized meditation will prove to be a particularly useful means of contact. We will be engaging in this type of meditation in the Unknown Country subscriber section in the near future. Subscribers will be informed when the first meditation begins. We live in quickly changing times, and don't forget, governments don't matter, disclosure doesn't matter. It's between we the people and the visitors. They're going to bypass the big guys. It's up to us. On the night of the devastating earthquake that struck Italy on April the 6th, a lighted triangular UFO was videotaped over Rome, and during the day on April 5, stunning daylight shots of an unknown object were taken over Milan by contactee Antonio Uzzi. These shots are among the best UFO video taken in recent years. There is anecdotal evidence of UFOs appearing just prior to many catastrophes, especially earthquakes. For example, Turkish UFO expert Hakan Akdogan reports that there was heavy UFO activity over Turkey just prior to the 1999 earthquake that killed 30,000 people. Akdogan also reports that, quote, in Izmir on April the 5th, we had many sightings and some pictures were taken too. Does this mean that there will be another quake in Turkey? Only time will tell. Just prior to the August the 15th, 2007 earthquake in Peru, UFOs were seen all over the country. For the most part, these were flashing lights, but they were bright enough to result in massive witness reports from Peru's capital, Lima. There were UFOs all over southern Asia in the days before the December 2009 tsunami that killed 250,000 people. In England, the February 29, 2008 Lincolnshire earthquake was preceded by reports of earthquake lights also. It has been theorized that such lights are generated by an unknown piezoelectric effect that occurs when fault lines reach an extreme level of stress. However, the clear daylight pictures from Milan are from an unknown object. They are not flashes of light, and the Rome UFO appears to be a softly lit triangular structure familiar in UFO literature for 50 years. Unknown Country and Dreamland thank Italian UFO expert Paola Harris for her reporting on this story. Paola will be our primary guest on next week's Dreamland to talk about this and all of the other remarkable UFO events that are taking place in Italy and in Europe at this extremely strange and intense time. In addition, UFO activity over Southern California appears to be quite high. On March the 24th, 2009, at approximately 5:50 p.m., researcher and author Starfire Tor observed a UFO over Burbank, California. She first saw an extremely bright flash of light and initially thought that this was a plane coming in for landing at the Burbank airport. However, when the flash disappeared, she saw an object that, she states, bore no resemblance to any known form of aircraft. On her website, starfiretour.com, she writes that the object immediately zipped straight up into the blue sky and was gone after the light flashed and flared out again. Shortly thereafter, fighter jets appeared in the area and began to fly as if they were looking for something at very high altitude. While the fighters flew in what appeared to be a grid pattern, the UFO appeared and disappeared inside the grid numerous times as Starfire Tor witnessed this extraordinary event. The maneuvering continued for 7 minutes while Starfire Tor watched. Then the UFO disappeared, and 2 minutes later, the jet aircraft also flew out of sight. This week's Dreamland, Up in a Minute, is about an exceptionally beautiful film made by Paul Davids called Jesus in India. It's our Easter special, and it is a very uplifting and extraordinary show. We have a very special premium for new 1-year subscribers or those who renew their subscriptions for 1 year during the time that the premium is available. It is the DVD of Jesus in India. This is a really beautiful DVD and one that you will treasure. I certainly do treasure it. I've watched every bit of it, and I thought it was just exceptional. Now, in order to get a chance at getting this, you must do the following. First, you must be a U.S. resident or have a U.S. address to which we can send the premium. Second, you must subscribe either for the first time or renew your unknowncountry.com subscription for 1 year or more after 7 a.m. on Saturday, the 11th of April. That is after 7 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, Saturday, the 11th of April. We have a very few of these, so I urge you to do this as soon as you hear this announcement after 7 a.m. on Saturday, the 11th of April. Also, for UnknownCountry.com subscribers, in the audio section you will now find the entire run of Ann Strieber's magical show, Mysterious Powers, all 19 episodes running from the time she started it up till shortly after her illness are now available to our subscribers. In addition, you will find a brief commentary on the Book of Ecclesiastes by Whitley Strieber, reading verses from the book and commenting on them. Subscribers, do you want these commentaries to continue? Let me know by writing me at whitley@strieber.com, and I will be putting up brief commentaries like this on the section on a regular basis. In addition, in the subscriber section, we're going to be starting synchronized meditation, and that will be in the meditation section. The first of these is available right now, so go to the subscriber section and take a look at the meditation area to find out exactly what we will be doing.
The Dreamland Festival is back, and our theme is What We Know and What We Suspect. Knock your socks off presentations from the whole Dreamland team. And room rates at the beautiful Scarrett Bennett Center as low as $40 a night. Plus, our attendance is still limited to 200 participants, so you're guaranteed a warm, personal experience and plenty of access to our speakers. Listen to what Marla Fries has planned.
I'm going to be doing a gallery style of readings, which will probably be psychic information and also communicating with your deceased loved one. Also, during the time of the festival, I'll be able to come up to different people and give them psychic information.
Get your tickets now by clicking on the store tab on UnknownCountry.com, then going to The Latest. Do it now. Tickets will run out.
This is Whitley Strieber's Dreamland. Expert hosts, unique information.
This is Whitley Strieber, and I am very excited and interested today because we're going to be talking about something that a lot of us have wondered about most of our lives. In the Gospel of Luke, it mentions that Jesus, after the age of 12, did what? Nothing. Not until the age of 30 does Jesus come back into the picture. 18 years of lost time, arguably one of the most important people in the history of the world, and most of his formative years are completely lost to us. All Luke does say is, and Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. That's it. Well, not quite, because Paul Davids, whom I have known for years, who did the most extraordinary Roswell film ever made that was on Showtime many years ago, and to this day I think got one of the highest ratings in the history of Showtime, has now done a new picture called Jesus in India, which I have watched and I was riveted. Paul, welcome to the show.
Whitley, it's wonderful to be here with you.
Well, it's very exciting, and Paul's website for the movie is JesusInIndiaTheMovie.com, with dashes between all the words. That'll be linkable through Dreamland, of course. And so now let's get right to it. The movie revolves around a former fundamentalist Christian from Texas. How did you happen to come across this person?
I met up with Ed actually at the International UFO Congress, first in around 2003, where he had a booth and was selling his book called King of Travelers, Jesus' Lost Years in India. And I found the topic fascinating. It picked up the book, spoke to him for a while, and we considered making a film back in 2002. It actually didn't happen until 2005. The reason I wanted to focus the film around a character such as Ed, in all my films, Whitley, I always have an underdog.
Yes.
I always have the character who's rejected by society, but who probably has the answers that society ought to be listening to. And, you know, in Roswell, that character, who you know very well, was Jesse Marcel.
Right.
the major who was out at the crash site, who was ridiculed and lambasted for having stuck by his guns on the UFO report.
Right.
And we think that he was right. I did a film about Vincent van Gogh, the ballet dancer Vaslav Nijinsky, who was catatonic for part of his life. In other words, I've picked the offbeat characters rejected by society, and Ed Martin, who was raised as a fundamentalist Christian in the small town of Lampasas, Texas.
Yeah, and some of those people that you have in the film, they came right out of my own past, and in even the Nick's store, which is there's a brief shot of it in the film. I've been there.
Was that your haunting grounds? Because you were in Texas for so many years.
No, it wasn't. Fortunately, I wasn't in East Texas. I just went through it every once in a while. It's a benighted area of the world.
Well, Lampasas it has a heavy presence, let's say, of the Church of Christ.
Yes, it does.
Ed was raised in the Church of Christ as a fundamentalist by parents who took him to church 3 times a week. He was a good Christian. His problem was he asked too many questions. He loved Bible study, but when he got to Jesus at age 12 in the temple in Jerusalem, and then saw that there was this enormous gaping hole for the next 18 years, it bothered him. Because he wanted to know the story. As a good Christian, he felt that Christians should be told what Jesus was doing from the age of 12 to 30. And no one had an answer that satisfied him. As a matter of fact, the answer he got was, Ed Martin, mind to your own affairs. Worry about the salvation of Ed Martin, whether you're going to heaven or hell. That's what you need to pay attention to. If God had wanted you to know what Jesus was doing in those years, it would have been in the Bible. God would have seen to it to put it there. So obviously we don't need to know, and it makes no difference.
Yeah, but, God's fine. I'm very happy. But I do want to know.
Of course. And Ed spent decades researching it, finding every source that he could. And the trail leads very strongly to India from so many different directions, Whitley. And we can talk about reports of ancient scrolls that have been translated by various people in various places in India. This was part of the search of our movie, Jesus in India, to try to sort through what's myth or legend and what is evidence and what might be fact.
And what indeed might be fact. Well, what about, we have listeners, by the way, this is being recorded live for the first time. We are on Ustream TV as we record this, and in the future, subscribers to Unknown Country will have a password, and you will be able to come and watch and ask questions during the recording of Dreamland. Occasionally, the guest will be on video with me, but most of the time it will be just me on video, but you'll be able to hear us both talking. Now, we have a question, and I think it's quite an interesting one, and I think we'll just start with this. What is mentioned in any of the Apocrypha about these missing years? I know the Gospel of Thomas it's referred to in the movie, does it mention anything specific about his travels during this time?
It absolutely does not, because what the Gospel of Thomas is a book of quotations of Jesus. Every line of the Gospel of Thomas begins, and Jesus said, and it gives a quote. It's like the quotes of Confucius. Confucius said. However, it is fascinating in this connection in that it points toward concepts that are embedded in Eastern religion that don't show up in traditional Christianity as we know it today. And the Gospel of Thomas is an ancient document. Professor Elaine Pagels of Princeton University, who's in our film, dates it back to perhaps the time of the canonical Gospels. Mark was the earliest canonical Gospels as far as most scholars believe. It may date back to that time. The Apocrypha
now, why
has
has
stories
it been, why isn't it
childhood, but it's not there. The missing years are not there in the Apocrypha. That we
okay, well, so now what about the fact that this particular gospel isn't? I'm diverting a little bit from our subject just for a second. It was rejected. The Apocrypha are Apocrypha because they were rejected. They ended up being, these books were hidden
Yes.
in order, and they became the Dead Sea Scrolls. They were hidden in order to save them from all being burned.
Well, there were actually two different sources of the hidden documents.
Oh, that's right.
Let me clarify. There were the Dead Sea Scrolls, and then there were the documents that were found in Nag Hammadi, Egypt in 1948, and Gospel of Thomas was one of those. Thomas is especially interesting because we're quite certain that Jesus did send Thomas to India. After the crucifixion, Thomas appears in India and spreads Christianity there. He's in Chennai, also known as Madras, for about 20 years.
So this is very important, because we know from this that Jesus knew about India.
Not only do we know, but obviously the Vatican does too, because Pope John Paul II went to India to pay homage to Thomas during his popehood, and
papacy, I think
he went to Chennai. There are posters of the Pope going there to St. Thomas Mount, where Thomas preached, and there's also a basilica for St. Thomas, a museum where his body at one point in time apparently was. So, yes, there's this great tradition of Thomas in India, founder of Christianity. Why did Jesus send him there if he wasn't sending him to a country he already knew? But there are all kinds of evidence that put Jesus there.
Yes.
During the missing years, and also there's a body of evidence that suggests that Jesus, that the riddle of Christianity and the crucifixion may be that Jesus survived the crucifixion and returned to India, particularly to the Jewish enclave of Kashmir, and lived out his life there. And there's a tomb, the Rosabal, the prophet's tomb, where certainly Ahmadiyya Muslims believe that is the final resting place of Jesus, and there are a growing number of scholars who believe that the evidence for this theory, though not proven, is very compelling.
And yeah, exactly. And you know, we're coming up on a break, but after the break, we're going to get into more detail about just exactly what kind of research has been done. But before we go there, there is in the film there is a quotation in whom describing Jesus as "in whom had dwelled the Spirit of the world."
Yes.
Now, where is that from precisely?
That is from a scroll that was found by Russian explorer Nicholas Notovich.
Right, and
at
we
the
will.
Hemis Monastery up in Ladakh, 14,000 feet elevation in the Himalayas.
Here is the extraordinary thing about that particular statement. You notice it's not "in whom dwelled the Spirit of God."
Mm-hmm.
It's specifically, and folks, please excuse me, today I have a cold. Mm-hmm. And, oh, thank you, my beautiful wife has brought me a cup of tea, and she's kissing my bald spot and everything. Anyway, in whom had dwelled the Spirit of the world. There is a card in the Tarot, card 21, the final card of the Tarot, which in the reading of the Tarot that I have in my book, The Path, is the representation of the transfigured Jesus and anyone else who follows this path, and it is called the card of the world, and it shows a figure who is beyond sexuality. It is an ambiguous figure that represents this transfigured being, and I was so interested that that particular phrase would be found in that particular place, because it's probable that the Tarot system came from India. So I was very amazed by that. It's a tiny hint, but an absolutely fascinating one. And folks, when we get back, we're going to be talking about Nicholas Notovich, and we're going to be beginning an extraordinary journey, really a wonderful journey through India, perhaps to some of the greatest secrets mankind has ever known or hidden. We'll be right back. We're back talking with Paul Davids about Jesus in India, and what a story. Before we left the air, we were talking just briefly about Nicholas Notovich. And Paul, why don't you tell us a little bit about who this man was?
His story is, as a Russian explorer in 1897 in the Himalayas, apparently he fell off his horse, broke his leg, and recuperated in the Hemis Monastery, a monastery that was then several hundred years old. It's at 14,000 feet elevation, and it has many, many ancient scrolls and documents. While he was there, the Buddhist lamas revealed to him that they had an ancient scroll, manuscript, called The Life of Saint Isa, the Best of the Sons of Men. Now, Saint Isa is Jesus. That's what he's called among the Buddhists, the Hindus, and in the Islamic world. And this document, when translated, Notovich discovered, filled in the missing years of Jesus from age 12 to 30, and placed young Jesus in India, first of all at the Jagannath Temple in Puri, India, which is the seat of the Shankaracharya, or the spiritual head of the Hindu religion. There are 4 Shankaracharyas. Jesus was there, and according to this manuscript, traveled up to Tibet and studied with both Buddhists and Hindus. Actually, also, while among the Hindus, objected to many facets of the Hindu religion and got into trouble there, raised trouble by protesting the caste system, by objecting to the fact that the Brahmas exalted themselves among the Hindus far above the untouchable class.
Right.
There were many aspects of Hinduism that Jesus painted in these scrolls did not approve of. At any rate, Notovich got the scrolls translated, and against the objections of Catholics that he was in touch with, published them. They were published in Russian and in French,
and
then later English, as The Secret Life of Jesus the Christ.
When did this take place?
The publication was in the 1890s.
And it must have caused a tremendous stir.
It caused not only a stir, but a lot of problems for Notovich. He became the object of a debunking that you've not seen until you, Whitley, came along with communion and experienced debunking. He was debunked. He was dismissed. They called him a charlatan, that he had made the whole thing up. Of course, part of our whole quest, our journey, was to work on the substantiation for the fact that Notovich reported accurately. And part of the substantiation is a Hindu Swami named Swami Abhedananda, who in the 1920s went to Hemis Monastery himself and asked to see the manuscripts, and was shown them, translated them again, and it came out almost word for word the same. And then you had a stream of other people, still just a handful through the years, who went to Hemis, who saw and reported back about the reality of these ancient manuscripts. That includes Russian painter Nicholas Roerich. So in our film, we're following the trail of all these people who saw the manuscript. We've been to the Roerich Museum. It's in both New York and in India. We went to where Swami Abhedananda lived in Calcutta, the Ramakrishna Vedanta Math. We spoke to the Hindu ascetics there, who showed us where the man had lived, his papers, and we established the reality of what Notovich reported, which...
Except for one thing.
Yes, we don't have the manuscript.
You don't have the manuscript. Did you try to see it?
We certainly have made the effort. Part of our filming is of the questioning of head Buddhists at the Hemis Monastery, who neither confirm nor deny they're having it today. They do speak of concern about what it would mean.
Is the monastery actually in Tibet?
No, that's in India.
It's in India, so it's conceivable that one day it could be revealed.
Yes. And
but not if the church has paid them a lot of money not to.
Well, people speculated about that. As a matter of fact, Notovich himself claimed that one of the cardinals of the Catholic Church had confided in him that the Vatican had over 60 documents from the Orient that dealt with Jesus in India.
Now, let me ask you this. Why would the Vatican care? I mean, I don't understand. it doesn't mean that Jesus somehow was not Christ if he went to India.
Well, there are two schools of thought about why early Christianity and official Christianity today might care and might not want this part of the story told. The one is that there's the assumption made, and I think erroneously, by a lot of people, that if Jesus spent all that time among the Buddhists and Hindus, that he was learning from them, and what he brought back to Judea to preach was an amalgamation of precepts and philosophies that were related to Hinduism and Buddhism, possibly even including reincarnation, which was later excised.
But of course, he did that. There's a lot of reflection of Egyptian religion in Jesus' teachings. There's especially in his moral teachings. Mm-hmm. The compassion that you see in Hinduism is there. Mm-hmm. The
compassion and forgiveness, which was not, let's say, it wasn't a hot item in Judaism in his day.
Right, except for Rabbi Hillel and his "do unto others as you would have them do unto you," which was also adopted into Christianity, and the Mithraic ritual, blood ritual, is very much like the communion ritual, to the point that one of the Christian commentators of the second century claimed that Satan had gone back in time in order to change the Mithraic ceremonies to make them look like the Mass. Mm-hmm. So,
Whitley, you also must point out that you also have the rosary beads, 108 rosary beads. You have 108 prayer beads in Buddhism.
I did not know that.
And when I was at Jagannath in Puri, where they have the rolling carts festival that the word Juggernaut comes from every year, they bathe their images of the deities in purified milk, 108 pitchers of milk. So you see, coincidence, or are there these commonalities that stem to a common source?
That's
common
very extraordinary. We've got quite a few questions, and for those of you listening to the recorded version of Dreamland, it is being recorded live from now on whenever I am the host on Ustream.tv channel Dreamland. It's ustream.tv /channel/Dreamland. And in the future, subscribers, you will be informed of this in advance and given a password that will enable you to enter and participate in this discussion. Now, here's a question for you from one of the listeners. Mm-hmm. If in some of the hidden books of the Bible, it mentions how Mary Magdalene was the one Jesus had deep theological talks with, could she have known some of the mystery school teachings of the East?
I hesitate to speculate on that. We followed a specific trail to try to document Jesus' presence in
India, right.
There are many theorists about Mary Magdalene. We have not gone there. We know about the Da Vinci Code and the theories about Mary Magdalene in France, and I would say it's a whole different line of inquiry. What I wanted to return to was you asked, why would Orthodox Christianity be so concerned about Jesus' presence in India?
Right.
And I mentioned the one reason, the concern that it would look like he learned from the Buddhists and Hindus and just took it back in an amalgamated form and created the Christian beliefs. However, what we have is his objections to Hinduism. It doesn't look like, if in fact he was there, that in any sense he was a passive student. Not at all. But he's in character as the lawgiver that we know him from Judea. But the other reason that may be at the heart of the objections could have to do with the second part of the story, the possibility, according to some, the likelihood even, that Jesus survived the crucifixion and had a life afterwards, that he left the Middle East and returned to India. There is a tomb there. There's a lot of evidence. It's presented in the movie. By the way, the movie is available on DVD now. It's been shown a number of times on the Sundance Channel in December, and we added 80 minutes of bonus materials, and it's available at our JesusInIndiaTheMovie.com.
And JesusInIndiaTheMovie.com, for those of you who are listening, is the words Jesus in India have dashes between them all.
By the way, you don't have to put the hyphens in.
Oh, great.
If you write just JesusInIndiaTheMovie.com, you'll get there and find not only the movie, but the books by Edward T. Martin. So the one that inspired the movie and the new one about our adventures in India and what we learned and discovered.
And so we can get this on your website, and
yes.
Presumably, is it available from Netflix? Or?
Worldwide. Netflix doesn't have it yet, but through the website.
Worldwide,
through the website. We're filming orders worldwide with an all-region DVD. We've already received orders from almost every continent for this.
Well, I have to say this about it. It is a beautiful film, and for those who are asking about links, there will be a link in Dreamland on our site, absolutely, to this film when the show goes up. But if you want to get it today, you can go directly to JesusInIndiaTheMovie.com and get it today, those of you who are listening live. But as always, when we put up Dreamland, we've always put up links to our guests' materials. And so it'll be readily available from UnknownCountry.com. Now, we're going to take a little break here, and when we get back, we're going to begin to get into a little bit more about just exactly how and why this is being suppressed to this day, and what might be necessary, and what we might be able to do to get some more of this information out. But more importantly, we're going to be talking about just what Jesus might have learned in India. We'll be right back. This is Whitley Strieber. I'm talking to Paul Davids, the director of a marvelous film called Jesus in India. The question has always been there. What happened during those 18 years that Jesus simply disappeared from the face of the earth? Did he go to India? What about the stories about his presence in the Americas? Exactly what happened during those 18 years? Because in the one reference to this in the Gospel of Luke, it simply refers to the fact that he increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. Well, yeah, during 18 years, something happened. And this marvelous movie gets into a lot of depth about just what it was that did happen. Now, let's talk a little bit about, and this is going to sound like a change of pace, folks, but it really isn't. Let's talk about Murray Beer.
Yes, Murray Beer.
Yeah.
It's a town in Pakistan called Murray that's famous for a beer of the same name. The spelling is unusual of the town, Murree. It's actually named after Mary, mother of Jesus.
Right.
And my author, Edward T. Martin, discovered this when he was in the Peace Corps in Afghanistan and had a beer in the American Embassy and tried Murray Beer and learned that Murray is named for Mary because there is a tomb there that goes back 2,000 years that the Pakistanis believe, in fact, is the tomb of Mother Mary. In Catholicism, there are no mortal remains, either for Jesus, who ascended bodily into heaven and sits at the right hand of God, or his mother, who was taken up to heaven bodily. And there is an explanation for why there are no tombs for either Jesus or Mary in the Holy Land. But in Murree, Pakistan, what they say is that Jesus, after surviving the crucifixion and, in fact, appearing before all the disciples who did see him, as reported in the New Testament, and who then went on to Damascus in Syria, he saw Saul of Tarsus there, who became St. Paul after his spellbinding vision of Jesus. Well, in the East, they believe that St. Paul actually saw him. It wasn't a vision, but that Jesus continued to live and headed back to India with his mother Mary, where he had been as a youth, and she died en route. and is buried in the town now known after her, Murree, Pakistan. Suzanne Olsen, an author who's written a book about this, has done a lot of research on this and almost got to the point of securing the DNA from the grave.
But not quite, and why not?
The terrorism, Daniel Pearl was killed not far away, and we encountered terrorism that faced us on our travels in India when we were in Kashmir. There's war and conflict there. Why is Kashmir important? It's about 100 miles away from Mary's tomb, and that's where the Rosabal tomb is.
Now, what tomb is this?
This means Tomb of the Prophet. It's a tomb that does go back 2,000 years, and we believe it's a prophet of Jewish heritage who's buried there because buried east to west as the Jews buried their dead, not north to south as in Islam, and the Hindus, of course, cremate. Jewish prophet for many reasons. There was a Jewish enclave there in Kashmir. We know it from the language. We know it from the culture. There was a Temple of Solomon there at that time. There was every reason for the Messiah, whose mission was to reunite the lost tribes of Israel, to reach out and go to both India and northern India, Kashmir, to reach out to the Jewish population there, which the prophet who was buried there did, and he's known as Yuzazov. Yuzazov is Jesus. Some say it means Jesus the Gatherer. Others say it means son of Joseph. We don't know for sure, but we do know that he preached many of the same parables as Jesus, that it's reported that he was there as a spiritual advisor to King Shalivahan going back to the 1st century. There are Hindu documents that have existed for 2,000 years that place this prophet, said to have been born of a virgin, persecuted in his homeland because he preached a religion of peace, who came to Kashmir and is buried there today. Now, the Ahmadiyya Muslims will tell you this is Jesus. They will point to an ancient carving of the prophet's feet that is there at the temple that show the crucifixion scars. And the rest of Islam, however, does not accept this. They deny it. They believe Jesus was raised to heaven as the Christians believe.
As the Christians do, yes.
He's a prophet in their religion also. So they reject the Ahmadiyya Muslims, who are in fact a persecuted minority among Islam. However, we in our journeys investigated this. We went to the tomb. Ed and I had to stay back by Dal Lake at the houseboats there for our own safety because this tomb is in a heavily Muslim district. Even our Hindu crew was not welcome there, and you will see in the film the hostility expressed toward them.
Oh, it's awesome. It's very powerful.
A powerful moment. I mean, their lives were in danger, Whitley. Whitley, the day after we were fortunate enough to get out of Kashmir alive, 16 people were killed very near where we were, including a soldier whose head was blown off. And at the very houseboats where we stayed, which used to be a very idyllic, wonderful, peaceful part of this heaven on earth Kashmir, used to be heaven on earth. Today it's war-torn. Those houseboats were bombed a year later, and the tourists stay there. So the conflict in Kashmir is out of control. There are soldiers on every street. Don't think, if you're listening to the show, that you are going to successfully go to Kashmir and visit this tomb now. It's too late. But the tomb does still exist, and it is a mystery. It is an enigma. And
one gets the feeling that a lot of these mysteries are disappearing into the violence of the world as we literally, during our lifetimes.
Well, didn't the Taliban blow up the Bamyan Buddha?
Exactly. And there'll come a time when Taliban-like people are liable to try to pull down the Great Pyramid and blow up the Sphinx.
And hasn't it been happening for hundreds of years? And I don't think we should blame any one particular group because the Romans and some of them in Christian time, but some of them predating Christian time, burned the Library of Alexandria in Egypt many times. And the Mayans, their ancient documents, the Incas, the Aztecs, so much of it was destroyed with the invasion coming from Spain. So there hasn't been a lot of respect for antiquities unless created in stone, like Machu Picchu, in a way that can't be readily destroyed.
Let me ask you this. There's a question on here from one of the listeners. Are you familiar with the book Jesus Lived in India by Holger Kirsten?
Yes, I'm absolutely familiar with it. As a matter of fact, Holger Kirsten, for our film, provided the photo that we show of the prophet's feet at the Rosa Ball showing the crucifixion scars. Yes, I do know the book.
Is there another listener question? Is there any connection between Jesus in India and Masonic tradition? And it's an interesting question. I have no idea what the answer might be.
I have no idea what the answer would be either.
Okay.
I think it's interesting. Doesn't Masonic tradition go back to the Temple of Solomon? Isn't that an important part of Masonic tradition?
Yes.
And I think it's very interesting that there was a duplicate, smaller, but a duplicate of the Temple of Solomon in Kashmir in the days of Egypt. And on some of the pillars of that Temple of Solomon were carved the declaration of Yuzis, that he came to them as a prophet of the children of Israel. And that was in approximately the year 50 A.D., I believe.
50 A.D., yes, that's about right. Well, it's really absolutely fascinating. The Internet is quite an amazing thing. Just looking at our open chat room, which is where people are listening to the show and making comments on it. We've got listeners from Australia, England, Holland, and the United States who've actually mentioned where they're from.
For those who are in Australia, as much as I would love for you to hurry and order the DVD of the film so you can see all the bonus features, I'm going to tell you that if you have the Showtime channel in Australia, Jesus in India will be shown 4 times on the Showtime channel in Australia over Easter week. So you can look for it there.
Well, good. All right, that's great. Now, we're going to take another brief break, and then we are going to be back and with your questions, folks. So if you've got questions at this point, now is the time to ask them, because this is going to be our last segment with Paul Davids. His film, Jesus in India, you can go to the website, JesusInIndiaTheMovie.com. That's JesusInIndiaTheMovie.com. Order your copy now. I watched it. I can assure you that it is well worth the cost. It is an excellent, fascinating film. It takes you deeper into this than we ever possibly can in an interview like this, but it is nevertheless well worth your time. We'll be right back. And we have Canada on the line, too, as well as the UK and the others. And Austin, Texas says specifically Austin, not just the United States. So we'll be right back.
Thank you.
This is Whitley Strieber. We're talking to Paul Davids, his new film, Jesus in India, available from JesusInIndiaTheMovie.com. Get it right now. If you live in Australia, you can watch it on Showtime. We're broadcasting live, recording live today. Our show is recording on Ustream.tv. People listening can watch me make the show. And in the future, sometimes they will also be able to watch my guest as we record this. When I'm doing Dreamland from now on, it will be recorded live. Our subscribers will be able to come on and will be able to listen live and ask questions during recordings. And the schedule of recordings will be up in the subscriber section on a regular basis. So, now...
Whitley, could I jump in and take this to a direction I've wanted to go?
Please. Oh, please do that.
Paramahansa Yogananda, the great Hindu sage, philosopher, and author of Autobiography of a Yogi, and the founder of the Self-Realization Fellowship in America and the Yogata Satsanga Society in India. In his writings, he drew attention to the three wise men from the East that are present in the birth story in the Gospel, Matthew. We three kings of Orient are. That's the way the song goes. They were present at Jesus' birth, bringing gold and incense and myrrh, which are traditional gifts for esteemed and elevated souls given in India. There was a PhD thesis written about this as well, speculating and showing the evidence why we should believe that the three kings, well, they weren't kings, the Magi. They were the Magi from the Orient, and it is believed by Yogananda and scholars that they likely came from India. There are some scholars who claim Persia and that they were Zoroastrians, but if you'll accept India for a moment, you could understand this tug from India on the life of Jesus, the life of the Savior, if you will, from the time of his birth, and then why not a continuing influence and a repaying of the visit at age 12 or 13. He would have been married, logically, had he stayed in Judea, because you have the bar mitzvah ceremony at age 13, and young Jews, males, are married off quickly in arranged marriages, particularly in that era.
Yeah, there's always been something peculiar about that. Also, he was bearded, wasn't he? I mean, didn't that indicate he would be married?
I can't answer to that, but I can say that there was the Silk Road at that time going from Judea to India and China, much traveled. There was a lot of trade. It was a cosmopolitan world at that time. People were not completely sheltered. It's logical that it could have and would have happened, that he would have made that journey. Yogananda says, repaying the visit of the three wise men. Now, when we went to the Shankaracharya, and this in itself was fantastic, Whitley, that we got an interview there. It was impossible. It was like showing up in Rome and asking to see the
and the man, the who you interviewed, his face is really, that is some human being.
He is extraordinary.
Yes.
And we were warned first that we would never get to meet him, and then we'd never even get our picture taken with him. But what unfolded at rapid-fire pace was that when he learned of the film we were making about Jesus in India, though he had never spoken out publicly on this before, and certainly never on video, for the record, he wanted to do it. And he called us into the headquarters there near the ancient Jagannath temple, and we sat at his feet, me with my video camera. Unfortunately, they wouldn't let me get real close, and I couldn't use my shotgun microphone, which looked a little, threatening. The shape of it is called a shotgun mic. I had to use the regular camera mic and the ceiling fan. The sound wasn't the greatest, but he spoke in Hindi. We translated it. The subtitles are there. He insists Jesus was in India, that Jesus was there at the Jagannath temple. He insists it has been covered up. He also insists Jesus traveled throughout India and did go to Kashmir, which implies a post-crucifixion visit.
Right.
And all of this is on the record for the very first time in our film. Now, coincidentally, and it's quite amazing, we also have the testimony of the late Monsignor Corrado Balducci, who's someone
Yes, I was going to mention Monsignor Balducci, whom I knew, of course.
Of course, because he was the one spokesman from the Vatican who went around declaring that UFOs are real, that they're not fiction, they're not demonic, they're not a product of imagination, but that extraterrestrial extraterrestrial contact is not in conflict with Catholicism. This was his message. But on Jesus
on Jesus.
No, on Jesus in India, he's so orthodox, and he makes the case, intercut with this interview with the Shankaracharya, back and forth between the two men. He makes the case that you can't go outside of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John in looking for the answers of the Savior, because that's all there is. Well, he neglects the fact that a lot was destroyed through the years. And the Shankaracharya does use the word cover-up, just like the Buddhist monks at the Hemis Monastery on the Life of St. Isa document. When we asked, can this come out? Can it be disclosed? They said, if in fact we do have it. This would have to be decided by committee. One person could not make the decision because we wouldn't want to be accused of having withheld it and be accused of participating in a cover-up. There's the politics, Whitley. How are we ever going to get to see it? Will the Dalai Lama ask that it be exposed and revealed? I wish he would. Even the Dalai Lama, who does appear in our film, has to say that he first heard of this information from others, not as a young boy in Tibet, as had been reported. Some people had reported the Dalai Lama had seen it at the Marlborough Monastery in his youth, and the Dalai Lama doesn't confirm it, but he can't confirm it. As someone supported by the West as he is, and we've had a government of the last 8 years with so many fundamentalist Christians and so much, he couldn't go beyond the statements that he made.
No, he couldn't afford to. Paul, we're coming up toward the end of our time together, and I've got a lot of listener questions I'd like to get to if I could.
Let's try.
Okay. Is there any indication in Indian religion, in Hinduism in particular, or Buddhism for that matter, that Jesus was present? Is there any echo of his teachings that you could find there?
Well, in both Buddhism and Hinduism predate Christianity.
Right. But, I mean, are there any legends about anyone?
Oh, yes, there are legends of the travels of Saint Isa throughout India.
India?
Yes. In Hinduism, they're so widely aware of it. And Nehru, the first president of India, even made the statement of how widely believed it is in India that Jesus was there. Yes, the tradition is an ancient one. This is not
so it's a
new.
Strong tradition there. It's not. It's an open tradition.
Yes.
Yes. Now,
and in the Islamic world, they call Jesus the Prince of Travelers, and sometimes the King of Travelers. And the implication is he journeyed almost more than any other man of his day. And this is not recorded in the New Testament.
And how long would it have taken walking to get from Israel to India? That's another question from a listener.
Well, Ed Martin calculates that the merchant trains, I say trains, they're camel caravans, it was about a year journey at that time.
About a year.
And you could also get there by ship.
Okay, here's another fascinating question. What do you believe happened right at and immediately after the crucifixion?
I'd like to answer it by saying that what I personally believe, I think is not the most important thing.
Yeah.
But what the experts I've talked to believe and suggest is far more important, because I've talked to, there's a medical doctor, a surgeon in the film, who gives the case that Jesus, on the cross for a relatively short period of time, we know that from the New Testament, 6 to 9 hours, could have survived.
Yes.
There are tombs in Israel with a back tunnel entrance. They don't all just have one entrance. So the fact that there was a rock over the main entrance in the front doesn't mean that Jesus couldn't have been helped.
And now, of course, you're getting into the very sort of speculation that the Vatican is so set against, and, in fact, the whole Christian community.
It's fair, but in the Islamic world, particularly among the Ahmadiyas, they feel that the miracle of Easter has been misinterpreted, and that the real miracle was that Jesus survived. Jesus did offer his life as a ransom for mankind. He had the encounter with Pilate. It's in the Bible, in which he didn't cooperate with what Pilate wanted. He was sentenced to death. Whether he lived is a matter of conjecture, except for those who accept the answer purely on faith. And they say that faith provides the answer to them, and they don't want to go outside of that. And that's the position of many people in this world. We're examining it beyond that without claiming to have an answer. We're asking the questions.
And so that's kind of where you are right now, is with these questions.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean, there are cases in history such as, let's look at the assassination of Lincoln, for example.
Right.
Where John Wilkes Booth. There's a debate today whether he really did die in the fire in the barn in the shootout, or whether he escaped and was made to appear dead. There's some that believe he made his way all the way to San Francisco and ended up as an actor on the stage again after taking a boat to England. And Hitler. There are many that don't accept that Hitler died in the bunker.
Right, exactly.
And they believe that he may have escaped and lived out his life in South America. It's a valid question, because certainly if there had been Romans who suspected that Jesus may have lived and had been seen with the disciples afterwards and had tracked people down and asked them questions, what would people have responded? What would the cover story have been? It would have been, no, you could not have seen him here. He can't be among here. He has gone to heaven where he sits with his Father, right?
Right.
So did the cover story become the myth? We don't know.
You know, to me, the bottom line of the movie and of this discussion too has been the enormous presence of all of this tradition of Esau in India. It's all over the country. There are even places where he studied, temples where he studied, places I would personally love to go to, because I bet they still resonate in some way.
It's said that in Benares, now known as Varanasi, along the Ganges, that they had a Hindu healing arts center where they cured cataracts by using obsidian blades. One could have learned that at that time, that kind of surgery, brought it back to Judea, and saved the sight of nearly blind people by performing an operation with obsidian blades on their cataracts. And what would the onlookers say, who knew nothing about these medical techniques? They would say, this man has a miracle that he uses to cure the blind. Could be. I mean, it's all speculation, but it is said that there was that medical technique available in India at the time. Whitley, I also just have to mention, I know we don't have much time, but Levi Dowling, Civil War soldier who wrote the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ.
Right, that was brought up by one of our listeners a few minutes ago.
It's channeled material, yes, supposedly from the Akashic Records, but it is very interesting how the years of Jesus in India that are described in the Aquarian Gospel parallel so closely so much of this other evidence that has been found, especially placing Jesus at the Jagannath Temple in Puri. We don't know of any direct connection between Levi Dowling and Nicholas Notovich, or Dowling having come across Notovich's work. We don't see that as an answer to why Dowling writes about this.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a question. How is that possible, that it appears there too?
Well, Paul Davids, this has been a really fascinating Dreamland journey. Paul Davids' movie, Jesus in India, you can get it on DVD. Go to JesusInIndiaTheMovie.com. If you're an Australian, you can watch it on Showtime in Australia. Look at the Showtime schedule. JesusInIndia.com, a great
Jesus
adventure.
In India, the movie. You can't leave out the movie.
That's right. I'm sorry. JesusInIndiaTheMovie.com. A great, highest adventure, both into India and into the greatest mystery, perhaps of all ages, the mystery of Jesus's disappeared, empty, unknown 18 years. Thank you. Under this scenario, the thermite would have been set off, presumably by the jet fuel. However, noted 911 expert David Ray Griffin does not believe this hypothesis and will be on Dreamland soon to discuss his new book and also these extraordinary new findings.
Don't miss the Dreamland Festival, June 26th to June 28th. Listen to what William Henry has planned.
I'm going to be calling for a new American Revolution of a whole different kind. The kind the Founding Fathers really wanted us to have. Now is the time.
Listen to what Ann Strieber has planned.
I've read over 500,000 abduction accounts, more than anybody else in the world, and I know things that other researchers don't. And I will tell you things they cannot or dare not. And I will answer your questions based on my unique knowledge.
Get your tickets now by clicking on the store tab on unknowncountry.com, then going to the latest. Do it now. Tickets will run out.
In Santa Monica this weekend, there was an extraordinary UFO event, and a very important one. After participating in a globally synchronized Earth healing meditation on Sunday, April the 4th, Ed and Chris Sherwood mentally asked for support from any benevolent extraterrestrial intelligence and initiated a 1-hour Skywatch. The result was that they obtained a daylight video of UFOs over northern Santa Monica. This is a strong reminder that our visitors stand ready now to engage with us in new ways. All we need to do is ask, and synchronized meditation will prove to be a particularly useful means of contact. We will be engaging in this type of meditation in the Unknown Country subscriber section in the near future. Subscribers will be informed when the first meditation begins. We live in quickly changing times, and don't forget, governments don't matter, disclosure doesn't matter. It's between we the people and the visitors. They're going to bypass the big guys. It's up to us. On the night of the devastating earthquake that struck Italy on April the 6th, subscribe either for the first time or renew your unknowncountry.com subscription for 1 year or more after 7 a.m. on Saturday, the 11th of April. That is after 7 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, Saturday, the 11th of April. We have a very few of these, so I urge you to do this as soon as you hear this announcement after 7 a.m. on Saturday, the 11th of April. Also, for unknowncountry.com subscribers, in the audio section, you will now find the entire run of Ann Strieber's magical show, Mysterious Powers, all 19 episodes running from the time she started it up till shortly after her illness are now available to our subscribers. In addition, you will find a brief commentary on the Book of Ecclesiastes by Whitley Strieber, reading verses from the book and commenting on them. Subscribers, do you want these commentaries to continue? Let me know by writing me at whitley@strieber.com, and I will be putting up brief commentaries like this on the section on a regular basis. In addition, in the subscriber section, we're going to be starting synchronized meditation, and that will be in the meditation section. The first of these is available right now, so go to the subscriber section and take a look at the meditation area to find out exactly what we will be doing.
The Dreamland Festival is back, and our theme is What We Know and What We Suspect. Knock your socks off presentations from the whole Dreamland team. And room rates at the beautiful Scarrett Bennett Center as low as $40 a night. Plus, our attendance is still limited to 200 participants, so you're guaranteed a warm, personal experience and plenty of access to our speakers. Listen to what Marla Fries has planned.
I'm going to be doing a gallery style of readings, which will probably be psychic information and also communicating with your deceased loved one.
First, the news from unknowncountry.com. A Danish laboratory reports that it has found evidence of the presence of the explosive thermite in dust recovered from the site of the September 11th, 2001 destruction of the World Trade Center. This is the first time that physical evidence of a pyrotechnic used in, among other things, demolition, has confirmed to be present in this debris. Previously, there had been some ad hoc analyses of the debris, but it has taken this long for a formal laboratory analysis of this dust to take place. The laboratory claims that substantial amounts of thermite were found in the dust. And the question becomes, why didn't the EPA report the presence of this material in this dust when it analyzed it in 2002? Researchers concerned that the collapse of the two towers was not a likely result of impact by aircraft have long contended that they appeared to implode as if they had been destroyed by controlled demolitions. The discovery that thermite was definitely present during the disaster strongly suggests that the towers may have been prepared in advance for destruction. Thermite is a pyrotechnic capable of producing extremely high heat. It can be applied to surfaces such as steel beams, and if ignited, could cause the sort of weakness that followed the impacts of the jets on the buildings. It has not been shown that the temperatures generated by the burning of jet fuel could have caused steel structural elements in the buildings to fail. The specific substance found was a metastable intermolecular composite or superthermite containing nanoparticles, which made it highly energetic. What does this all mean? Well, either the buildings were intentionally demolished in some sort of bizarre false flag attack, or they were mined prior to anything like this happening because of the fact that they contained in their upper floors highly secret National Security Agency facilities. And it's believed by some researchers that the United States routinely mines buildings that contain such facilities so that if the buildings should be overtaken by terrorists or invaders, they can be destroyed. A lighted triangular UFO was videotaped over Rome, and during the day on April 5, stunning daylight shots of an unknown object were taken over Milan by contactee Antonio Uzzi. These shots are among the best UFO video taken in recent years. There is anecdotal evidence of UFOs appearing just prior to many catastrophes, especially earthquakes. For example, Turkish UFO expert Hakan Akdogan reports that there was heavy UFO activity over Turkey just prior to the 1999 earthquake that killed 30,000 people. Akdogan also reports that, quote, in Izmir on April the 5th, we had many sightings and some pictures were taken too. Does this mean that there will be another quake in Turkey? Only time will tell. Just prior to the August the 15th, 2007 earthquake in Peru, UFOs were seen all over the country. For the most part, these were flashing lights, but they were bright enough to result in massive witness reports from Peru's capital, Lima. There were UFOs all over southern Asia in the days before the December 2009 tsunami that killed 250,000 people. In England, the February 29, 2008 Lincolnshire earthquake was preceded by reports of earthquake lights also. It has been theorized that such lights are generated by an unknown piezoelectric effect that occurs when fault lines reach an extreme level of stress. However, the clear daylight pictures from Milan are from an unknown object. They are not flashes of light, and the Rome UFO appears to be a softly lit triangular structure familiar in UFO literature for 50 years. Unknown Country and Dreamland thank Italian UFO expert Paola Harris for her reporting on this story. Paola will be our primary guest on next week's Dreamland to talk about this and all of the other remarkable UFO events that are taking place in Italy and in Europe at this extremely strange and intense time. In addition, UFO activity over Southern California appears to be quite high. On March the 24th, 2009, at approximately 5:50 p.m., researcher and author Starfire Tor observed a UFO over Burbank, California. She first saw an extremely bright flash of light and initially thought that this was a plane coming in for landing at the Burbank airport. However, when the flash disappeared, she saw an object that, she states, bore no resemblance to any known form of aircraft. On her website, starfiretor.com, she writes that the object immediately zipped straight up into the blue sky and was gone after the light flashed and flared out again. Shortly thereafter, fighter jets appeared in the area and began to fly as if they were looking for something at very high altitude. While the fighters flew in what appeared to be a grid pattern, the UFO appeared and disappeared inside the grid numerous times as Starfire Tor witnessed this extraordinary event. The maneuvering continued for 7 minutes while Starfire Tor watched. Then the UFO disappeared, and 2 minutes later, the jet aircraft also flew out of sight. This week's Dreamland Up in a Minute is about an exceptionally beautiful film made by Paul Davids called Jesus in India. It's our Easter special, and it is a very uplifting and extraordinary show. We have a very special premium for new 1-year subscribers or those who renew their subscriptions for 1 year during the time that the premium is available. It is the DVD of Jesus in India. This is a really beautiful DVD and one that you will treasure. I certainly do treasure it. I've watched every bit of it, and I thought it was just exceptional. Now, in order to get a chance at getting this, you must do the following. First, you must be a U.S. resident or have a U.S. address to which we can send the premium. Second, you must